Hi there, thank you for watching this video. So I'm going to be sharing about how I got my first two cars. Yes, they are two cars. So for those of you who do not know me, those who are seeing me for the very first time, my name is Rachel Agasha, and on the channel we talk about everything in the United States of America. I share my experiences in this country. I share the things that I wish I knew before I came to this country. I share about my challenges. I share about life in general. I share about so many things. I also share about the DV lottery. Again, for those who do not know, I won the DV lottery in 2021, and that is how I was able to move to the United States. I moved to the States in August 2022, and yeah, in today's video it's going to be more of our story time. So I do not have a script for this. I'm just going to flow as my memory serves me right. So yeah, I'll be giving some tips. I'll be giving some ideas, and you know how to go about getting your first car. So when I came to this country, I had to start working, and I had to work in DC, you know. So I was living in Virginia, and DC from Virginia is Virginia to DC is almost an hour's time, right? So I had to commute. So I'd have to wake up at around 6 a.m. to be at my workplace by like 8 a.m., right? So I'd have to be on the road for like an hour. And then, of course, I had another job in Alexandria. So this whole commute thing was being a whole other thing. But mind you, I could not drive. By the time I left Uganda, I could not drive. My mom used to tell me, I'm going to take you to driving school. Oh, Rachel, you will go to driving school, until the last minute. I promise you, I said during driving classes when I was about to leave the country, of like, you know, we are getting ready to leave the country. And then my host said, you know, she should be able to drive, blah, blah, blah. And there I was learning to drive in the last like month of my being in the country. Did I learn to drive? No, I did not. Yes, I was in the car driving from one place to another and all those things and feeling confident like, oh, you know, I'm driving. But no, I actually did not learn to drive. But I would advise, if you're actually moving to this country, please learn how to drive. The difference between driving in this country and back home is that here people are more organized, and then they drive at a very faster speed. But because of the organization, you know, you drive in lanes, you have to stay in your lane. Before you leave your lane, you have to indicate. It makes driving a bit easier. Then also we keep left. Oh my God, we keep right in this country. And in Uganda, we keep left. In most African countries, actually, I know Rwanda keeps right. So people from Rwanda would not have a problem. But in Uganda, we keep left. So the only difference is you're going to have to keep right, you know, here. And then, of course, the rules are a bit strict. You don't do this. There are all these stop signs and all these things. But anyway, long story short, I had to get a car. My host insisted that, Rachel, you need to get a car. So in my head, I'm like, you know what? Even if I got this car, I'm going to drive her. When? Why? How? Another reasons why I would advise that you learn to drive back home is because it's a bit cheaper than out here. I was paying $45 per hour. Like every time I had to be learning to drive, like every time this instructor was giving me lessons and all that, so I had to pay $45 per hour, and of which 1 hour is not enough. So I'd go out there, make my money, and then come here and spend it on driving classes, which was horrible. Okay, I learned a thing or two, but then it's interesting, by the way. Anyway, learn to drive back home before you move to the United States of America. So the first thing I did was actually get my permit. So to be able to get your permit, because there's a driver's license and then a driver's permit. So a driver's license, you are able to drive, but with someone who has a license in the car. You get what I mean? So you're not really allowed to drive by yourself, technically. But again, no one is going to be out there looking, oh, this or that, because here, when you're doing the right thing, no one is going to be chasing you around and all those things. But I would advise that you do the right thing. So I had to first do the test. I read for the test, sat for the test. So you do the computer test. These guys normally tell you if you've passed it or failed it. The first computer test is comprised of different questions that there is a first set that you can't afford to fail. You can't fail even one question from. So I go do this test and I fail it. And I'm so heartbroken. I'm like, oh my God, what? No. But again, what did I know about cars anyway? Of like, yeah, I used to sit with my mom, drive and go, but I didn't know these things. I realized how ignorant I was about all these car things, right? And road traffic rules and all those things. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, I remember the Uber driver who took me back home was like, you know, it's okay. I actually came and did the test the first time and I failed it. I came back the second time and failed it. I'm like, hey, okay. So I went back home and read for this test and gave it my all. I read for this test the whole day, let me tell you. So when you go to you just Google, normally there are tests that you can actually read, because one thing about this country is that there's nothing that no one hasn't done before. Yeah, so if you're looking for something, it's definitely online. Check, you will find it. So I looked at these tests, I trained myself, I examined myself, I gave myself marks, and the next day I went back. I'm like, I am not leaving this place without this permit. And I did my exam and I passed my exam and I got my permit, of course. And then now I was able to buy a car, because you're not going to drive a car without a permit, right? Get a car without one. So there was this car, I think it's a dealership or a car shop or whatever, but probably a dealership. Yeah. So I go with my host and we explain our situation. I am here with my $1,500. I'm like, I want a car that is $1,500. That is the money I have saved for a car, and that is what I'm going to pay. So 1,500 is like 4.5 Ugandan million shillings, right? The cars here are cheap, actually. You can get your first car cheaply like that. So I look around, I put a picture here for my first car. I look around, and then we're looking at all these prices. I'm like, oh, you know, I can get a car. Then they bring out a car. No, actually, we found this car. And my auntie's like, you know, your first car doesn't have to be so fancy. It doesn't have to be all those things. I'm like, you know what, whatever. It's something that you need to, you know, like you have it and you just learn. You can knock it around and do all those things. So it's okay. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. So we get my car. I pay my money. I'm so excited. I pay for the tags and all those things, pay for insurance. But you know, you need to pay for insurance. Actually, you don't take the car before you pay for insurance. I had to source around for cheap insurance. I got one and I had to pay $180 for starters. Yeah. So I paid that and then I got the car. And then I went back to the place. I showed them the insurance thingy receipt. So then they gave me my car. And I went home and I was excited. I kind of loved it. There was something about it. I mean, oh, my baby, my car, right? I remember my mom telling me, Rachel, your car is ugly. You guys, my car, I'll leave a picture here for you to because I have pictures. I was like, hey, mommy, you did not call my car ugly. She's like, Rachel, okay, I mean, but it's ugly. But I loved it, you know. So I'd go in there and drive around, because my auntie used to say, no, you need to drive around to, you know, master the art of driving. I'm like, no, I don't want. Anything can happen, you know. So this one time, I get into this car and I am driving around. Mind you, I do not know how to reverse. I don't even know the road rules. Like, I'm just here. I know the gas and I know the brakes. The brakes and the accelerator. I'm like, okay. So I'd go around my neighborhood, and this one time I go a bit further. And then it's like, you know, that part of the road where people enter, you know, to like the residential areas. And I am trying to turn. Good Lord, I struggled, because what was I doing? That is when I realized, you know what, you cannot drive, just stop. Like, I would be okay being on the road and maybe going but now turning, reversing, those things, I struggled. I remember there were kids coming back from school and they were looking at me, and I'm like, good Lord, if you save me from this situation, I am never getting into this car ever again. So I go back home. I was able to reverse. Actually, no, I didn't reverse. I just decided to keep driving straight. So I drove straight and went. Then I had to reach another residential area and try to turn. And then there was a school bus coming and I was causing commotion. Basically, a lot of drama. I thank God that I can drive now because, my friend, if you cannot drive, learn. Because in this country, a car is a necessity. Unless you live in New York, unless you live in DC, unless you live in those very busy areas where public transport is really good, you will really need to learn how to drive. So I go back home and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go through this ever again. So you know what? Car, please, no problem. So the next day, my auntie tells me, all right, so we need to take this car for inspection because you buy the car as is. Yeah, and here you have to do car inspection every year. So and before you pass inspection, everything about the car has to be really functional. So we got to this we got to this I think an auto repair shop. And actually the guys where I bought the car from had recommended these guys, like if I needed to fix anything, because they would give you like a list of things that need to be fixed, this whole, for you to be able to pass the whole inspection thingy. So we go to this car shop. This guy's like, oh, we charge $80 to check. I'm like, you know what? We don't have that money. My aunt is like, you know what? We are from Africa. We just got this car. Blah 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 blah. Also, those guys recommended that you guys are good. This guy's like, okay, fine, no problem. So he puts the car up on the lift, and then they start to check the car. Oh my God! This guy comes back and he's like, this car is a piece of junk. It is not fit to be on the road. In fact, it needs to be trashed. And I was looking at him like, excuse me, what? And you know what's funny? I was not sad, I was not angry, I just laughed. My auntie looked at me, she's like, you're laughing. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? It was so funny for me, of like, you just called my car a piece of trash, and then you say, it is not fit to be on the road. Where am I supposed to get more money to buy another car? So I am looking at this guy, I'm like, okay, so what do I do? It's like, take it back to wherever you got it from and tell them it's a piece of junk. I was like, okay. So I just drive. Actually, my auntie decided to drive because I could not drive to save my life. My good Lord. This guy is like, everything up there is rusted, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, okay. So we go back to this car shop, and at this point I'm really disappointed. I'm like, okay, you guys knew this thing was a piece of junk, but then you sold it to me anyway. So I talked to this guy. I'm like, hey, you know what? I took this car to the repair shop, and this guy said this car is a piece of junk, so I don't want it. Mind you, I had bought this car $1,500, and then this guy tells me, oh, now the value of this car is $500. I had been with this car for a week. I had not used it. I had not driven it. I had not done much with it. And then he's saying this car has reduced value to $1,500. I'm like, okay, wow. So I tell him, you see, I gave you all my money and I need a car. I'm not going to take this car anywhere because you sold this car to me, so I'm returning your piece of junk. Find a way to help me because I don't have anything else to do. So this guy is like, okay, we can trade it in and then you can pick another car that you think you can afford. Meanwhile, at this point, I don't even have any money. But because I kept going back and going back, I think this guy just felt pity for me. He's like, okay, we have another option of financing the car. So this car was $3,500. I'm like, okay, reasonable, right? But if you have to finance it, then they like literally double the price. They fix everything that is broken, make sure it passes inspection, give it to you, and then you start up on a payment plan where you pay like monthly, right? So so this guy tells me, okay, so you're going to start a payment plan and this should help you build your credit. Meanwhile, at this point, I don't even know anything about credit. But I'm like, you know what? If he's helping me and he's saying it's going to help me build my credit one way or another, sign me up. So we do all the paperwork and all those things. So they tell me pay 100 for this, pay this for that, pay, get insurance. I'm like, so now where am I supposed to get insurance from? Because you don't take a car out of a car shop without insurance. So these guys reach out to me like, oh, we know insurance people who can help you. So I pay for insurance for the very start. It was a bit higher because now I am doing full coverage. I'm not doing liability. Full coverage is expensive. I'm like, okay, because now you possess the car, but you technically don't own it. Yeah. So until you've paid off the lien holders, you do not own the car. So you start financing it. So they tell me you're going to be paying $226 every month for the car. And yeah. So I'm like, cool. So I take my car home and it sits for like a whole year because, again, I can't drive. So I bought my car in December, my second car in December. I started paying off the car, and in December 2022, so I had been paying for it up until, like, I pay monthly up until recently. I'm actually a whole car owner right now. My title is somewhere hidden. Yeah, but it's so anyway, I have my car. How do I learn to drive? So I just parked the car, you guys. I could not drive, I swear. Well, I stopped working at that job in DC, and I moved, of course, from Virginia and all those things. So I just parked my car. I'm like, you know what, because I was working from, I'm like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I promise you, I was still using those Ubers and then the train. I'm like, okay, now if I need to go somewhere, I could use the train. If I need to go somewhere close, I will walk. So that is what I was doing. This one time I tried to drive. So I tried to drive, and I am trying to figure out where did I come from. You guys, I couldn't even navigate with the GPS. I'm telling you, on top of learning how to drive, then I had to figure out how to use the GPS. A lot of work until some friend of mine is like, you know what? I'm going to teach you how to drive. I'm like, okay. So this friend was amazing. Like they had a small car, very nice car. And every weekend, like every Saturday, I'd be like, come. So I'd go, and then we would drive. I'd be like, let's just drive aimlessly. And mind you, I would not even pay for gas. Some people are heaven sent. Some people are really nice people. So I'd drive and drive and drive. And then slowly by slowly, I started to master the art of driving. I started to learn how to reverse. Nikki also helped me big time. Learn how to drive, all those things. She's like, Rachel, you need to learn to drive. You can't live in this country and you cannot drive. You can't Uber everywhere. You have to. Maybe my Uber is expensive. Yeah, so still, even after I had done all these lessons, I still wasn't driving. And then until the time I had to move to this apartment. So of course, I didn't hire movers for the most of the time. I'm like, I have very few things, I can do this. So then I started to drive my car back and forth from like my previous place to that new apartment. So that is how I actually started to really drive, because as at a point in my life where no one was going to actually do the moving for me, my friends could only do as much, so I had to do things on my own. So regardless of how, I don't know how many trips I took, but it was through those trips that I actually finally got to have a grasp on this whole driving thing. And yeah, I have not stopped driving ever since. Last month, March, actually, I was able to pay off my car finally. So I am currently a whole car owner. I don't just possess it, I own it, and it has been beautiful. Driving is amazing, and tell me why. I just learned that it's actually therapeutic as well. Like, just get into my car and drive and go to like a very far place and then drive back home, and I'm feeling very much better. So that is how I got my first two cars. Or even the other car, by the way, because when I took it back, I had to get a title from the DMV. So yes, I have been a car owner of two cars, two whole cars, a Chevrolet Chevy Aveo I think it was a Chevy Aveo 2000, about what? Some 2000 number, and a whole Mazda owner right now. So yeah, I intend on buying another car and another car and another car and another car eventually. But yeah, so thank you for watching this video till the very end. If you have any questions, you have anything to say, leave your question or your comment or your opinion in the comment section. And don't forget to leave a like for the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share it if you want to, and I'll see you in our next video. Take care and stay safe. Bye bye.